Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you. and, and what a beautiful autumn morning it is here at Reed. And it's so great to see you all here. Thank you for joining us for Parent and Family Weekend. Parent, family, friends, supporters of our amazing students. You know these students quite well. You know what they've been through in the past 18 months, what we've all been through. I've been saying 18 months, it's probably longer than that by now, but I've gotten used to that way of saying things. We've all gotten used to saying, I was planning to do blah, 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 and then COVID-19, right? And I will say that in many ways, there are things that we would love to be able to do with you this weekend, and we would have loved to have had you in classes yesterday, and we're still getting through this. And so we appreciate your patience and your care for one another. And I want to say that students have been magnificent. So whether your a student is a first year or a graduating senior, they have done the work that was necessary last year and in these past months to look out for one another, to look out for themselves. And it's really been an incredibly inspiring time because of that. I always like to say that I lead with heart. It means a great deal to me that I'm here, I'm honored, I love this college, and I love these students. And that's particularly important at what has been called the most intellectual college in the country, that we also have heart. And you know, as I know, that your students have a great deal of heart. The center and heart of our college is really student life. And the team at Student Life here is extraordinary. We wouldn't be able to provide the level of support for students without each and every person here and every member of their team. We all take care of each other, and Student Life really, really takes care of our students. So I'm delighted to introduce this panel and to welcome you all to today's programs. Thank you for being here. Enjoy. Thanks.
President Bilger said hello this morning, and it was like the worst response back. It was just like, hello, good morning. I know it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and coming from the student life side of things, I would say our students are, especially our first year students who have an 8:30 Hume lecture in the morning, can get engaged and have conversations. I'm assuming y'all can do the same as well. So, good morning. All right, that gives us some more love, some more energy to start it this morning. I'm Mcconnell Black, pronouns he, him, his. I'm the vice president for student life here at the college. And I get the lovely pleasure of working with a lot of your students regularly and a wonderful team as well. And so this is just a few of us, but we have a lot of staff members here to support our students, particularly outside of the classroom. So just to give you a little rundown of how things are going to work today, I know some of you are close by, other folks. Hopefully you picked up a note sheet, takeaway sheet. We're going to be having some interaction this morning, so if you're hoping that we're just going to chat at you the whole time, that's not the plan. So we're going to have some interactions, we're going to have some conversations this morning with each other and things of that nature. And the big thing about what we're hoping to accomplish today with you all, we have two big goals. One is that you can leave away today with a toolbox and some toolkits of sorts and resources that you can help support your student. And I think that's really important, and I'll talk a little bit why that's important, that you have the tools to help your student. I give an example quite regularly. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work with lots of parents, and one of the things that I always share is I share a story typically. I'm a storyteller, so bear with me on this, is that I've had situations where I've had parents who are on two kind of spectrums, I would say. The parent who drops their kid off and is like, they're your problem now. You'll deal with it. Whatever happens, just deal with it. And then you have the other end of it. And I must say this because we have lots of programming happening this weekend for our students too, where I've had parents show up to dances. And I'm actually going to say Halloween because this is actually what has happened. Was I had a parent show up to a Halloween dance, and we're like, "What are you doing here? Your kid wants to have fun. Let them have fun a little bit." And I always say we want to find somewhere in the middle. It's really important to be in the middle because we want to be in partnership with you all to make sure that you're able to support your student and ultimately get them to what I consider getting to the place of truly being adults so that when they leave Reed, they can navigate the world. So it's one thing to be at Reed and do the intellectual pieces and be in the classroom and then also learn all the other stuff that goes along with it. But it's really important that once they leave Reed, that they have all the experiences, both academically and socially, that they're able to really navigate the world and be productive citizens of our country and of our society. The second thing that I'm hoping that you will accomplish today is that you will leave with a network of other parents. And so on that cheat sheet, kind of takeaway note sheet, you'll see that there's space for you to connect, and you, again, as I said, you will connect with some folks today, and hopefully you learn from each other. When I think about coming together and resources and tips and things of that nature, while yes, we may be the experts in our particular areas, you also are the experts in your particular areas as parents. You know your kids better than anyone, really. And so for us, it's also about creating a community together of tips and tools and resources, because you may be doing something that another parent isn't doing. You're like, maybe I should try that to help my kid out. So our hope again today is that you have an opportunity to interact with each other. So I'm going to dive right into some things just to set the context for today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the goal of the student life experience. And a lot of times, when we think about the student life experience, most folks will just say it's all about that social stuff. It's the stuff that happens outside of the classroom. And to some extent, yes, that's correct. But here at Reed, one of the things that I think is really important is that we want to integrate what they're learning in the classroom with what they're learning outside of the classroom. And that comes from an integrated and a holistic approach and experience that we want students to have. We recognize that our students are not just one-dimensional. They have lots of aspects of their experiences. They have various lived experiences. Their journeys are different. And we have a very diverse student body, and that is really important that we all learn collectively from each other, but also recognize that one thing doesn't always work the same way. And so students need various experiences or various supports and resources to really help them thrive. So it's not just about the academics. It's also about the heart and the body. So part of that is thinking about self-discovery and personal development for our students, helping them get a better sense and elevate their sense of self, thinking about personal responsibility, thinking about ethics and integrity, thinking about how their own identity is developing. Our students have been really with you all for the last, and actually I should probably make a note because we probably have parents who are here who hadn't been to campus since 2 years ago, so we probably have sophomore parents in the room too. But they have been with you all for roughly 18 years, and so they are starting to learn and experience different things and connect with peers and all of that. And so they're coming into themselves as adults without necessarily, parent next to them saying, okay, no, don't do that. That's why you have us to kind of help y'all out. So just know that just because you're not there, we're here to help guide and put some parameters around things. Another piece of this is around self-efficacy. We want our students to develop self-confidence. We want them to think about how they're motivating themselves, maybe motivating their peers. We want them to be thinking about their goals, the things that they want to accomplish in life. We also want to think about this from a growth mindset. I think a growth mindset is really important because, our students are really hard on themselves, I think. And I think this generation is really hard on themselves. And so it's not always about getting the right thing perfectly, but also it's about how you learn from that and really think about those strengths and the skills that they have developed. And that's a big part of today is that we're going to ask you to think about, okay, what are some of the areas that your kid has been most successful, your student has been most successful, and what are those skills that made them successful in that endeavor? because we want to continue to think about that in that perspective. We also want to think about our students, again, as I said, it's holistic. So we think about well-being. Well-being is becoming even more of a top concern for families, for students. And so how do we help our students navigate and manage emotionally? So when we leave here, when our students leave here after 4 years, they're going to be in the world and all kinds of stuff is going to be happening, as it has been happening now and even prior. So we want to make sure that our students have the strength and the vitality and the mindfulness to really be thoughtful about how they are engaging their experience. We also want students to really understand their social responsibility to the society at large. So it's not just about them, but what does this mean for them in connection to others, to the larger community? How do they make sense of dynamics of power and difference? As I said, it's not just about them. We are in a community together, and that's one thing that Reedies talk quite often about is being in community together. So leadership development, civic engagement, cultural awareness and competency, thinking about inclusivity, things of that nature. So, and the last piece of this is about the preparation for life beyond Reed. And as I said, at the end of your student's journey, I think our biggest hope is that they would be able to take everything that they are doing academically, socially, the ways that they're connecting with community organizations, possibly with internships, study abroad opportunities. They take all of this experience and actually translate it to the things that they want to be doing even beyond. With purpose, I would say, with purpose. And you'll probably hear a little bit more this afternoon from our Center for Life Beyond Reed that talks a little bit more about that and the work that they do to help support our students for their life beyond Reed. So for today, our goal is to have some dialogue, have some discussions, and we consider you to be key partners with us in helping to make sure that your student is successful and to have a holistic experience. And I said, I have some wonderful colleagues here that are going to be providing some tips in some particular areas, whether it's around campus engagement, whether it's around safety and awareness, whether it's about self-advocacy or even health and well-being. So they're going to provide some tips. We're going to have opportunities for you all to connect. And so I'm going to turn it over to our first person, which is Amy.
Thank you, Cornell. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Schuffman. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the Associate Dean of Student Campus Life, so that means I oversee residence life, student engagement, and orientation. It is great to see you all this morning, and I hope you got some time yesterday and today to walk around campus. I have been working on campus kind of throughout the pandemic, and I can say this year, I can definitely feel the excitement of our students on campus. When they arrived for new student move-in, they were excited and ready to be here and to really kind of re-engage with things. That, of course, has led to some bumpiness along the way. I mean, I know myself kind of re-engaging with the world after being a little bit more kind of close-knit has led to some really ups and downs, and I think that's a really interesting thing to think about when you're transitioning to college. It's not only our first-year students who are really experiencing kind of a new read and a new experience, it's definitely our sophomore students as well, who those who were on campus had a very different experience last year. So I really want to recognize that we do have a lot of students experiencing read for the first time and really trying new things out. This is a huge time of transition for many of our students. They're finding new friend groups, they're trying new academics, they're looking at, well, maybe I actually don't want to major in that. And so I think that's really important to kind of recognize that your students are going to be trying many different things. They're going to find the things they like and the things that they don't like. One of the things that I really encourage people to talk about with their students is really trying to engage in other things outside the classroom, and it's particularly helpful during some stressful times. Here you'll actually see some really neat visuals that are put on by our student engagement department and some of our students on campus. I don't know if any of you saw the pumpkin carving yesterday. We have a student showcase later and just some really cool things like speed friending. We recognize that our students need some support in helping kind of find their communities here. And we are really invested in providing many different opportunities for that and recognizing that our students engage in different ways. Some of our students really like big, loud events, and other students are a little bit more introverted and perhaps are more interested in thinking about picking up a craft activity and doing it in their room. And I think it's something that is really important for you all to recognize. There's just not one way for your student to kind of socialize and find engagement kind of at Reed. There are two things I like to highlight to both parents and students, because often I will get phone calls from parents being like, my student doesn't know what's going on. And some of that is just helping our students wayfind and really learn how to find out what's going on. Two things that I just want to highlight that are also accessible to you all is our events page. Events.read.edu about is really relying on peers. Our students, yeah, they like to talk to us and kind of hear some of the things that we have to say, but I find it resonates much more for them when they are talking to people who have been through a similar experience to them and can really normalize what they are going through. So we have many different peer positions on campus. I think most of our departments that we work with have some form of a peer position, whether it's our student house advisor, which is our form of an RA. If you have a first-year student, they have an OWL, which is an orientation and wayfinding leader. We have peer advisors that you'll hear about from the Center for Life Beyond Reed. We have interns and coordinators in our Multicultural Resource Center. Really, most of our departments have students who are really there to reach out to other students and kind of help guide them to Reed. So a great thing to do is if your student's talking about some troubles they're having, ask, have they talked to their roommate? Have they talked to their HA? Have they kind of talked to other peers about it? I often find once they get over that hurdle of talking to someone else, their peer, it feels like, oh, I'm not the only one going through this. Another tool I really like to highlight to families and students is the Student Hub. This is a page kind of designed by our student support team. And it allows students to really navigate, like, what do I do if I have a question about my board points? And it'll really kind of guide a student on who to talk to. I think this is a really important tool because, as Cornell was talking about, we want our students to be able to kind of advocate for themselves and navigate for themselves, and that is really kind of a learned skill here. And lastly, I want to say many of your students probably will be coming home for winter break, or maybe you'll be talking with them, and it'll really be a time of reflection for your student to think about, like, what went well with the semester, what didn't go well. And I really want to highlight to support your student that January is going to provide some new opportunities. Students will be in new classes, so they will be interacting with new peers. There will be another student engagement fair, so a student can start connecting with a different club or organization. Often we find that students are changing their friend groups pretty rapidly to find kind of who they want to spend time with. So I really want to highlight, like, maybe your student will say something didn't go as well, that January can be an opportunity to kind of really kind of start over and try something different. So, thank you.
So next up, we'll have Gary talk a little bit about safety and awareness.
Good morning. My name is Gary Granger. I'm the Director of Community Safety, or the Minister of Mischief, depending on your disposition. I've been at Reed since 2010. I oversee the safety, the emergency preparedness and planning, and the things that you might associate with campus police departments or public safety departments. That's what we call community safety here at Reed. We're a non-sworn, unarmed department, but we still manage a whole lot of the things on campus that you would typically see managed by those kinds of offices. So, if there's a theme here, it is what I'll say at the beginning, which is your role as a parent, is to help your students hopefully become their own best safety advocates. I get to be an expert twice, not just in my field, but since I have college students. I have an undergrad and a graduate student right now, and so I've been living, trying to fulfill my own advice to parents, which is to help them become their own advocates. It is possible, and I think it really is beneficial to your students to get support from you in figuring out how to find the support themselves that they're going to need throughout their college career, because that, as we all know as adults, is what you end up having to do anyway. So how do they do that, and how do you help them do that? it starts with knowing what resources are available on campus. You know, everything is web-based, it seems like these days, and we have a website, and I encourage you to check it out. Our resources are listed there. But community safety is pretty much the only place that is here in person 24 hours a day, every day of the year, period. And so down in 28 West, which is the west end of the campus, your student can, any time of any day of the year, walk in and talk to a person who will be waiting there to help them. And ideally, they've tried to find the help themselves if they can. But you know what? If they can't, or if they get stuck, or they just need to check in with somebody, that resource remains available to them. And that person will help them find the resources that they need that they can find themselves later. So I encourage you to have them look for the resources that are available. There are lots of resources. Along that theme, I want to talk about what I call the safety dichotomy of being at a small private liberal arts and sciences college like Reed. It feels really safe. It looks safe. And it is safe in a lot of fundamental ways. And we are an open campus, and we are influenced by all of the influences in the neighborhoods that surround us, like every other place. We don't have a wall. And while we have more services for safety and security on this campus than almost any community outside of a college campus like us has, with people here 24 hours a day on campus to respond within 3 to 5 minutes of pretty much anything, that resource does not guarantee that your student is safe and all the time, and they need to take some responsibility for themselves. For example, locking their door, locking up their bicycle. If they have a friend to walk with at night, walk with a friend. It's not that the campus is unsafe to walk alone at night. It is generally safe. And it's a good practice to walk with a friend if you're going to walk at night, if you can do that. And if you can't, then you call us and we'll walk with you. We'll do those things. And so knowing the resources, understanding that it feels safe and it is safe in fundamental ways, but that does not mean that we don't think about our safety. That's the awareness piece, is to still be thinking about, how do I keep myself safe? How do I take responsibility for my things? You know, so often we'll see a student put their laptop and all their most valuable possessions on a table somewhere and go walk into Commons to get their food. Or they'll be sitting in the library and they'll go to the restroom and leave it all there. And it's great that it's probably okay to do that, but it isn't always okay to do that. And so we need them to think about those things. One of the ways that I think you as parents can be most helpful in this way is to talk about what ifs. When the opportunity arises with your students, say, hey, what do you do at college if this thing happens, right? What would you do? For example, we just had an earthquake drill, and I've been taking these down. What would you do if there was an earthquake, right? This will help them think about the answer to that question. They might be frustrated with you, but if you still ask the question, then it's going to land with them somewhere. So talking about, who would you call if you had something stolen, like your bicycle? What do you do if you get locked out of your room? What do you do if you think one of your friends has had too much to drink, right? Do you know what to do in these situations? And instead of telling them what to do, right, this is sort of prompting them to think about this. I think that's an important thing to do with our students. I've done it with mine, and sometimes they appreciate it, and sometimes they don't. But I do it anyway because I'm the dad, right? So I think those are some of the fundamental ways that you can help your student. And we are always a resource. I'm always a resource if you have more questions about that. Finally, I'll sort of finish where I started, is that we are here 24 hours a day, every day of the year, in person. And so if your student seems to be struggling with some of the things that I could help with or has questions, please encourage them just to come by and say hello to us, and we will help them out. Thank you.
All right, first activity. All right, so our goal here is that we want you to connect with some other parents for a moment. And there are some questions that we want y'all to think about and actually have some dialogue. Again, it can be one parent, it could be a couple folks together. But our hope is that you can talk a little bit with each other about some of the things that are coming up for you as it relates to some of the tips that you maybe have. Again, I think about this as shared knowledge. We're co-creating tips and tools together because there are things that we've shared, but there are probably things that you have too that could be helpful to another parent. So we have some questions up here. I'm gonna give you a little bit of time. I'll kind of cue you up to let you know when we're getting ready to come back. But I want to just say, okay, think about 5 to 10 minutes to have some dialogue and conversations with the person next to you or the family next to you. If you're not near someone, if you can find someone that you can chat with as closely as possible. And as I said, we'll bring folks back together in just a little bit. So think about some of these questions, have some dialogues with each other, take some notes. Also connect with that other person too. Write their names down, get their contact information because they may be a good resource even after this. So that's going to be our first activity. Am I making sense? Awesome. Let's go for it. All right, y'all are great. Y'all are great. So what I want you to do for a second is. By the way, this is not a test, by the way, so just know for this part, you don't have to report back out, so just yet. I said yet, so just remember that word. It will come back up. So one of the things that we will do as part of this is that at the end, I will actually be going around because we have another set of discussion questions. And I will be going around because I think it would be really helpful to hear some of the things that you kind of put all together based on this discussion and then the second discussion that we'll have as well. So just keep those things in mind. Hopefully you're jotting down some notes. And when you get to that second set of discussions, it's okay to go to another set of family members or parents here too to get a different perspective. So, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over now to Johanna, who is our director of I'm doing your intro for you.
Thank you so much.
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So nice to be with you all here today. My name is Johanna Workman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I'm the director of counseling services. And I want you to think back, maybe 16 years, maybe more, to a time when your student was real young, when they were an infant, from the age of 1 to, say, 3. And remember that time when they were just learning to locomote, and maybe they're starting to crawl, and then maybe walk, and then run, and they run away from you. And, and they go a little bit, and then they turn back, and they're watching, and then they go a little bit, and they turn back, and they're watching you. They're watching to see, are you still here? Do you care about me? Have you abandoned me? Do you have confidence in me? Do you think I can do this? Do you think I have this ability? And they want you there, but they also want their independence. And that's what psychoanalyst Margaret Mahler called that period of separation individuation. And years later, another psychoanalyst, Peter Bloss, came around and said, hey, I think adolescence is another phase of that separation and individuation period. And we know that adolescence these days, especially for students in college, goes to about age 23 or a little bit older. And so this is a time similar to when your student was a little one, that they want you to allow them to grow and have that independence, but also to be there and to express confidence in them. So I'm going to talk about some tips and tools on how to do that. So tip number 1, kind of let go a little bit. Your student may not need you to check on them every single day. They may. They may ask for you to check on them by text. You can determine that between you. But there may be times where they don't contact you for a long time, and that's okay because they're getting to adjust to their new environment and new peers. When they do talk to you, sometimes they might come to you with all the problems, and that's very typical. Like they come to their parents, their families, their caretakers with their problems, and then they go to their peers with their successes and celebrations and joys. And the impetus, the pull you might experience is to try to fix it for them, but the thing to do is to listen to them without having judgment. Sometimes they just want to vent. Sometimes they don't want advice from you. Sometimes they just want you to hear and know that you're there. Allow your student to make mistakes. That's how we learn, and that's going to be very hard for folks who love them. But a lot of the students are coming from places where they were the straight A student, the valedictorian, an overachiever, and then they find college life difficult, and because it is demanding. But instead of focusing so much on grades, focus on what they're learning. What did you learn today? What do you find interesting? Are you engaged? A lot of when we see students come to our counseling center and they're very stressed out and anxious, a lot of times, and they come and they say that they're anxious because they're not doing so well in class. At the root of that, oftentimes, is that they don't want to disappoint you, and they're thinking like, I can't mess this up because my family are going to be so disappointed in me, and they don't think I can hack it. But let them know that their effort counts, that you're proud of them, and keep going. And again, try not to fall into the pattern of giving advice, but allow them a space to talk to you. Expect your student to change. They will change. They're learning new things, new exciting things. They're living unsupervised for the first time. They're around new peers. Some of those changes are not going to be great. Some of them are going to be very positive. But allow them that opportunity to explore and grow, and give them the dignity to fail sometimes. That's how we grow. Encourage healthy habits while not giving advice. And that's a tricky thing, but basically a healthy diet, adequate sleep, regular exercise. Instead of lecturing them on, did you eat your vegetables? Did you get your 8 hours of sleep? You can ask them, for example, how did you feel when you ate well? How did you feel when you exercised that whole week? How did you feel when you got 8 hours sleep? And then by doing so, you're helping them connect self-care to their emotional well-being. Like others have stated, be familiar with campus resources, and that includes what we call the HCC, the Health and Counseling Center, the Disability Center, any organizations with social clubs. And so then when your student does call and they're in distress and say they are asking for advice, you can help them wayfind and tell them, well, there's this office over here, why don't you connect over there? Have a plan that's focused on mental health. We know that increasingly over the last 10 years, and certainly during the pandemic and kind of in this post-pandemic period, the mental health issues of students are on the increase. And so if they have at home a psychologist or psychiatrist, see if that is somebody they can continue maybe through telehealth so they don't have that disruption. Know what services are available at the HCC, the Health and Counseling Center. Sometimes we can provide short-term therapy. Sometimes we have a case manager, and if your student needs to have ongoing counseling or psychotherapy, we can connect them. We always have somebody available to do same-day services for students who are experiencing crises. If things are going a little bit beyond that, if you're starting to see symptoms of depression like sadness, isolation, thoughts of not wanting to be here, then know what services are available. You can contact the counseling center. And then if things get too bad for your student and it's too stressful, know that and let them know that their life is most important. And then if it's too much beyond, you can consider things like, the student can consider things like taking a medical leave of absence. Thank you.
So our next Our next colleague is our Dean of Students, and so, Tawana, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. I'm a call and response churchy girl from the Midwest. Good morning. That was more so for me than you, so thank you for indulging me. I am Tawana Parks. I lovingly serve as the Martha A. Darling Dean of Students here at Reed. I've been here a little over 2 months. In fact, it'll be 3 months on the 16th. But I've been doing this work, and I see my work I serve from an asset-based and student advocacy approach to my service with students. So the tools I'm going to share with you are the ones that I actually use when I'm working with students. And as you can imagine, in the role of Dean of Students, sometimes I receive students that are in crisis, meaning they're stressed, they're not sure what to do. And so this first one that I'm going to share with you is helping your students recognize their strengths and opportunities for growth is actually that. I typically disarm in the sense of let's not focus on the problem at this particular moment, but let's focus on the things that you're really great at. What are some of the strengths? And as they're sharing their story with me, I'm pulling out those great strengths that they have, even as they're in the midst of a crisis or in the midst of solving. And we do a SWOT analysis, which is often seen in the business world, but I find it very helpful to help students first recognize what are you strong at, what are you great at, even in this moment that we're having right now. And then what are those opportunities for growth? What are the things that we actually need to address in order to excel and thrive the way we want to? So tip 1. Tip 2, this one is born out of creating an environment that invites confidence. As you can imagine, some of your scholars are probably in the atmosphere of Reed of other brilliant students just as themselves, and maybe some that have been exposed to maybe more information than they have. And there's something called the Imposter Syndrome that tends to creep in there that when I'm working with students, again, that I tend to address with them. And if we're not familiar with the Imposter Syndrome, just throw out a few things. It's perceived fraudulence. Although I'm brilliant, I'm now in this space where I'm seeing other brilliant folks, and maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was, or maybe I'm not as prepared as I thought I was. And so self-doubt creeps in, and this maybe feeling of personal incompetence, or even though I have so many accolades and I have accomplishments and experiences, this imposter syndrome tends to creep in. And so as you're talking with your scholars, as they're sharing things with you, positive or negative, it's always great to invoke that environment, or keep that environment of confidence, so that scholars are staying on that same thread of fighting off imposter syndrome, which we know can happen throughout our journey as adults, or as they're adulting. So creating that space and motivating and creating that space of confidence is also very key. My third tool that I use with students often in problem solving, you see it as knowledge, strategy, and ideal. Sometimes our scholars come, they may be angry with the institution because they don't feel the institution is doing something that they want to happen. And my approach is often, what do we know about it? What's the knowledge? What is the information that we need to have? Who are the partners on campus? Who has the information? Even you have the information. You may have to direct them to information. And then out of that knowledge piece, what are some strategies? What are the best approaches to this particular situation or concern that we're facing or dealing with? Or positive. It could be a proposal that a student wants because they want a particular service on campus. So we talk through the strategy, we talk about the collaborators, the partners that we should deal with, and then it gets us to our ideal, which is what we started with in the beginning, which is that problem. What is it that you want to see, or what is it that you're addressing or dealing with, and how do we use the knowledge, strategy, and all the ideals that we have to get the win-win? I'm also a very win-win approach to my work. I always acknowledge, of course, the things that may come against what we want, and that's also a part of the knowledge piece. What do we know, good, bad, and ugly? And then the fourth, they still need you. They need you, although they may not express that or show that they need you, but they need you. So that safety net of knowing that you're always there to listen, as Johanna was sharing, I had so many stories of interactions with parents and students came to mind. But stay in communication in the loop. I think about my own story really quickly of my mom and I's interaction after my first semester of college. And I came home and I decided that I didn't want to eat pork anymore. And in our family, apparently, I didn't know how important pork was to my mother. But I refused to eat, bacon and the sausage, and she just blew up. I mean, you would have thought that I had really, murdered someone or something in terms of our interactions. And later, so for me, I shut down. If we're upset about bacon, woo, some of these other stories that I might want to share with you. Yep, I'm not going to do it. So later on, I said to my mom, and I was dating a Muslim at the time, and I was raised Christian, so of course what my mom was really getting at is that you think I'm about to change religion, right? You think I'm about to change fundamentally who you've raised me to be and who you know to be. And I told my mom, yes, there was influence there. Later on, months and months later, we had this conversation. I said, well, Mom, really, the real reason why I stopped eating pork, although the influence was there, is because you have hypertension, Dad has hypertension, and I don't want that. So the best thing for me at this young age where I have the confidence to do so is to stop eating it now. And yes, I'm gonna miss ribs. And yes, actually pepperoni was my thing at that time. I'm gonna miss those things, but I don't wanna deal with hypertension. And from that story, I share with you that they're gonna go through a lot of changes, a lot of exposures, but how you approach it could be the difference of months finding out what's really going on, or finding out right then in a way that you've created that environment that they know that you're there to listen to them no matter what. And sometimes it's difficult. I've been working with my husband with our daughter. It's been difficult to hear some of those stories. But if you close the loop, if they don't think that you're there, boy, you can experience what my mom and I did just over a story of bacon. So they need you. You are their safety net. You are their core and center. How they approach you now, permission that they used to ask you for is now turned into guidance that they need you. And so those are the tips that I have used over my time, and they seem to work. They change, of course, with every student that I meet, but the core of it is, I believe in you. I know you can do it. You have such great skills, and we just need to figure out what those are. We also need to figure out those areas of growth and own them. And then you can move forward and be that advocate, your self-advocate, and that strong, well-rounded, holistic adult when you leave the journey on your own. And so thank you so much for your time, and colleagues for your very words.
All right, so we have one last activity before we finish up, and you'll have about 5 minutes here to have some conversations, again, with maybe the same folks that you chatted with before, or if you want to have some different folks to have some of those conversations. But my hope is that at the end of that 5 minutes, I'm gonna go around and actually hear from folks a little bit about what are some of the things that came up for you as your top takeaway for you as you were having some of the conversations around these discussion questions, and also some of the things that my wonderful colleagues have already said. So I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, and we'll again start to wrap up because we're getting close to the end of our session. And we'll leave you with resources, i.e. our contact information and ways to get in contact with us should you have more questions or need more advice. I love getting phone calls from parents who are like, can you give me some advice about how I should handle this? Those are the best conversations, I would say, that I just love those conversations, because what it is that you're engaged in there, we're giving you tips, it's showing that we are in partnership together with supporting your students. So I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. Go ahead and have some conversations. Discussion questions are up top, and I'll call you back in just a little bit. All right, I'm gonna start to wrap us up just a little bit more, because I want to get a chance to hear some of the things that folks said. So I would love to get maybe 2 or 3 groups who were saying some good things of what were some good tips that you had. I may pick on some groups. Can I pick on y'all? All right, here we go. So I just wanted to get a sense of tips. What were some of the things? Can I get another group of folks who had some great tips to highlight for you? What was a tip for you that was really helpful that y'all chatted about? All right. So one of the things was that we have a lot of introverted students, and when we hear that our students are engaging in some of these fun things, they are continuing to encourage that to happen, which is a really good thing. So good. Can I get one more from someone? What about y'all? What was something that came up?
We had a very diverse group of students. I would say that the spectrum that encouraging them to run social opportunities.
So they had a group of very diverse students with lots of different experiences. And one of the things was that their piece is like encouraging them to be social is really important. So I think the social theme is like a big one. As we said, we have lots of resources, lots of supports around that. Amy talked a little bit about that. The presentation will be here for you, so you'll be able to see those links and all that good stuff from the presentation. And you also have our contact information as well up there. I just want to say thank you all again for spending some time with us this morning and engaging with each other. I hope that you connect with other families as well, and so make sure you make those connections. And as I said, we'll be posting this for you to actually have access to, but we want to make sure you have enough time in between to take a little break before you get to your next session. So thank you all. Thank you to our wonderful colleagues as well for being here to share information with you. So enjoy the rest of your morning.